Hello, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to give everyone just a few minutes to get in and get settled. For those who are joining us early, if you wouldn't mind popping into the chat and saying that you can, in fact, hear me and you can see our screens, that would be very helpful. We want to make sure you can get everything ready to go before we dive into this content. All right. Let's see, you can even pop into the Q&A maybe. If the chat is being buggy, you can always come back into Q&A. Yep, awesome. Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, well, we are going to go ahead and kick things off because everyone, we have a tremendous amount of content to get through today, but it's all digestible, do not worry. My name is Ariana Shannon. I am the marketing director here at SalesIntel and also your MC for the day. With me, I have CEO at SalesIntel, Manoj Ramnani, and then also Mike Burton, co-founder of Bombora, here today to talk about the 5 steps to 5x pipeline efficiency, so that way you can get your CEOs on board with your go-to-market strategy. Please feel free to go into the Q&A, ask all of the questions that you have. We will have a segment at the end of this for you to get your questions answered. And also feel free to take screenshots and take notes. It is going to be recorded, but we want to make sure that you get all of the information that you need from this today. So, all right, with that, Manoj, over to you. Let's take it away.
Thank you, Ariana, and welcome everybody. I'm looking forward to the session. We'll make it a Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop your questions. I know Ariana is doing a phenomenal job and she will keep a tally on that. And Mike, super excited to join you here. Quick intros. My name is Manoj Ramnani, founder and CEO at SalesIntel. A quick plug-in about what we do. We help you generate the pipeline efficiently. How do we do that? 4 different pillars, right? We help you identify your ICP, who are your ideal customer profile. From there, with our partnership with Bombora, who you'll hear shortly from Mike, we tell you who's in the market from those ICP, and then we give you the actionable data, contact data for people. There goes our tagline: find your people, build your pipeline. We help you build your pipeline by finding the right people and making sure that we have the human touch of the quality across the board with the data. So that's about me and SalesIntel. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. And thanks everybody for joining. Looking forward to today. And as we go through, just to reiterate what Manoj said, I would love you to drop any questions in the Q&A so that we can make it interactive. I'm Mike Burton. I'm a co-founder at Bombora. We are an intent data company. So effectively, we listen to companies that you want to sell to, or companies that maybe are already your customers. We listen to them consuming research across this cooperative of media properties and other constituents that we've built and maintain over time. And then we can surface for our customers when we see these companies showing abnormally large spikes in research behavior that are relevant to your business. So the idea is to plug this information into your sales and marketing motions, which we'll talk about today, so that you can, have more meetings and sell more of your products. So hopefully a good starting point to kick us off.
Great, thank you, Mike. So you brought up putting data and intelligence into the sales motion to give them efficiency, right? To make the go-to-market team efficient. So I want to set up the stage here and start this thing by sharing the survey results. So here are the survey results that we got from over 200 B2B companies, and the sales and marketing, revenue operations, the leaders, they have reported these numbers, and I was shocked to see some of the stats here. 83% of the companies view ICP definition as fuzzy at the best. In many cases, they just don't have a clue at all. 91% of the companies debate the lead quality on an everyday basis, right? Think about it. A lead is coming in and you're having a debate about, is it a lead we should work on? Is it a good lead for us or not, right? 67% discuss pipeline cross-functionally just once a quarter or less, right? So cross-function is your sales, your marketing, your revenue leaders, your product leaders coming together to discuss the pipeline generation. And 87% are sometimes or not at all aligned on what should they report on, right? So this just frames and puts the very topic of inefficiencies in the pipeline generation and inefficiencies in the revenue organization, and that's a result of misalignment, right? So we are here in 2023, and these just simple and fundamental things majority of the companies don't have in place. Right? Yeah. So how do we overcome that?
And I think one of the things I've seen, especially in the top bullet, is that especially smaller companies, they literally don't know yet. Yeah. They're not deep enough into market. They're not deep enough into their product evolution to have figured out exactly where they win. And so I think the trap that companies can fall into is, well, let's not put any flag in the ground. So I think the key is, like, even though you're not sure, still make a bet. Still create an ICP, still take the information you have and put a flag in the ground, even though you know that it can't be perfect because you don't have all the information yet. So just because you feel like you don't have all the info doesn't mean you can't, make a definition and stick with it for a year or whatever it is.
Yeah, take the first step and then iterate on it. Right? Great point, Mike. So we came up with these 5 steps, these 5 nuggets that we want to share with all of you on 5 paths to 5xing your pipeline efficiency. I'm sure there are others, right? But here are some of the nuggets that we want to share with you. And all those 5 buckets are: 1, define, as Mike mentioned, even if you don't know, if you're starting out your business and you don't know who your ICP is, just take a stab at identifying your ICP, quantify how big is that ICP, and then iterate on this. We'll talk more about it. That's the first and the 5th, right? Bullet points here. Second is we'll touch on, Mike will dive deeper into identifying and surfacing those companies from your ICP that are currently in market, where you should focus on your limited sales and marketing budgets, especially times like this, right? When we are all asked to do more with less. Third is targeting the right people, right? Within the companies that are in market, you want to be able to talk to your decision makers and get the right outcome with the right messaging. And at the end, we will talk about how do we do predictable forecasting and planning, right? So those are the 5 things we are going to touch upon. So let me dive deeper into the first, defining your ICP and quantifying. How do we do that? Before we go and define our ICP and quantify how big is the ICP, let's take a step back and look at these 3, M's. I say that: TAM, SAM, and SOM. We are all familiar with TAM, total addressable market. This is the market number that, in my opinion, you should keep it for the founders to put it in the investor deck. Right? This shows you how big is the market, who can possibly buy your solution. Right? Second is service available market. What portion of market fits you today? Right? Yes, you can go and sell your product and your services to a huge market, but today, what percent of that market, what portion of that market that you can service based on the product that you have, based on the team that you have, based on the resources that you have? And then finally, of that service available market, service obtainable market, what percent of that market can you obtain today? What percent of market can you reach today effectively through all your channels, whether it's your marketing channels or your other outreach channels, right? So your ICP is at the very best SOM, right? If not a subset of that SOM, right? So with that, let's share with you what we did. If you look at our business, we are in the revenue intelligence business. When you look at the TAM of our business, it's huge. It's infinite, right? The Gartners of the world, they have put 30 to 50 billion as the TAM for our business, right? But if we say that, okay, we are going to go after the 30 to 50 billion, that essentially means that every company that is selling to other businesses, every company that has a sales and marketing teams, they become an ICP for us. Well, if I direct my team as a CEO to say, go after that with the limited resources that we have, do you think we'll be successful? No. So what did we do? We saw that when we targeted our sales and marketing motions within our ICP, our win rate was 3 times in that ICP. So let me just unpack for 2023. This is our real planning that we did in December. We pared the 30 to $50 billion market down to 900 million. Let's say this year we can focus our energy, our efforts, our resources on this $900 million market. And that was, if you look at here, dominated based on where is our product today, right? Who can we service? And we figured out that, you know what? Yes, we have some international data, but are we the best there? Or should we play in the area where we are the strongest one? We know we are number one when it comes to the high quality decision makers in US, right? And we identified 20 verticals where we have higher win rates than the others. So that's how we identified one part. And the second part was, we looked at the data from the firmographic side to say companies of what size are good for us. Like what size of companies can we service with our product and our services the best? And we identified companies with 50 to 500 employee size, or if they have raised the money and they are accelerating their go-to-market motions, right? And then finally, we put the technology install base data to see what type of companies are good. So when we put the lens of technology, what we found was companies that have already invested in the CRM, right? Like Salesforce, HubSpot, companies that have invested in the marketing, companies that are serious about the go-to-market motion, and they have equipped their sales team with the cadence solutions like SalesLoft and Outreaches and Sales Views of the world, right? When we applied those filters, you'll see we came up with 30,000 companies. Like, okay, here are the 30,000 companies where we have 3x chances of winning, right? And our ACV of $30,000, those are the customers. Not only our win rates are higher, but those are the customers where our lifetime value is also higher, because they are going to stay with us for the long. They're not going to come and churn, which is, the economies like this, your best revenue is a revenue that you can retain from the current customers, keep them happy, and upsell them on the other products that you have. So that was the exercise that we did. As you can see, from 30 to 50 billion market, we brought this thing down to 30,000 companies and about 900 million.
And Manoj, maybe talk a little bit about that balance of how you guys approached the win rate as a key input, and then also least likely to churn and lifetime value, because those two things, especially in one particular segment of our business, they don't always match up. Yeah. Sometimes it's, the segment, the cohort of accounts that's easiest to sell is not easiest to renew, yeah, or vice versa. So what was your experience with that? Did those happen to match up well?
Great point, Mike. Great point that you bring in. In our SMB sector, for example, very small businesses, they are looking for data and they come in very, very quickly, right? Their ACV is lower, they come in quickly, you win at a higher rate there. But then on the other end, they don't renew, right? They churn at a much, much higher rate. So given the resources that we had, that our sweet spot is here. On the other end, enterprise customers, for us, where we are today in the evolution of our business, it takes far more time and the efforts to win them. Yes, their win rate, their renewal rate is higher, but it took a lot from our product and our support team to just support those large enterprise customers. So that's why we tried to say, okay, for 2023, right, the beauty of this ICP exercise is you can do it, every year, because every year your brand recognition is increasing in the market, your team size is increasing, and your product is maturing, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We went through a similar exercise and had to kind of wrestle with that, like one segment where we had a much better win rate, but lower retention, versus another segment where we had a much lower win rate, but outrageously good retention. And so there's a flag to be planted there as well. It's like, are you going to build around, like maybe a slower growth organic approach where you might bring on a lower number of customers, but it's going to be a really healthy base, or somewhere in between. So yeah, thanks for the color. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. So, you can do these exercises, provided that you have solid data, right? We pride ourselves for having, great demographic, firmographic, and technographic data. Recently we launched our technographic data, and that has been the game changer, not only for us, but hundreds and thousands of the customers that are using and leveraging this directly through us or through the platforms where our technographic data is there. And why is this technographic data different? Couple of reasons. First and foremost, we build this data from ground up. So the taxonomy that we used to build the technographic data was pretty organic as to how buyers make decisions, how technologies are installed, from the infrastructure level to communication layer to application layer, all the way up, right? And our buyers, they tend to prefer that way of navigation through the taxonomy than if you're bombarded with 15,000 products and you don't know how to bucket them. So day one, we started the right taxonomy, and then we put these 18,000 technology products that we cover today across 22 million companies, right? So if on our company side, we cover 22 million companies around the world. So think about large metrics, large table of 22 million rows and 18,000 technology. So you have the most coverage of data available through our technographic stack. And the next point was, why is this data so accurate, right? Because of a couple of things. Number one, we have exclusive partnerships with some of the largest resume providers, resume companies, job description companies. We have a huge network of our users who's contributing the technology install data. And then last but not the least, we have the research layer, right? When we started the company with the research layer focusing on the contact data, company data, it's the same research team. The research team is much larger now, but it's focused on ensuring that the signals that we are getting from different documents and on the free web about the technology installed at a company are validated through the research process before we surface it for our customers. And our research on demand team that stays with the customer throughout the contract. So if the customer is interested in the technology that we don't cover today in our technographic data, we are able to provide that service. Or if the customer sees that the technology has less coverage of the install base, we are able to increase that. So when we have data available for firmographic, technographic, and demographic data, you're able to segment and find the right ICP. And here's a little bit of how do you keep your CEO, and in case, is this my case, myself and the rest of our team, as they are going to market, it becomes easier for everybody once everyone is aligned as to who our ICP is. Like, you make the decisions much more faster. If you get, like in our case, when we get an inbound lead coming in that is less than 50 employees, we take a very cautionary approach to see, how much effort should we spend there, right? Because we don't go and spend our marketing dollars targeting non-ICP users, which are on both sides of this sweet spot that we have identified here. At the same time, if Dell comes in or Microsoft comes in, Google comes in, knocking at your door, say, hey, we are looking for a solution because we are really not happy with the provider that we have, we will opportunistically look at it.
Sure.
Like, we won't say it, we will opportunistically look at it, be very transparent about what our product can do for them today, and then share our product roadmap, right? So having the clarity as to what our sweet spot is for every part of the go-to-market organization makes it much easier, right? Not only for sales, marketing, and revenue operations, think about your product organization, right? If product organization is clear about who they are servicing, who they are designing and developing the product for, it becomes a lot more easier, because a product that's a good fit for the enterprise may not be a good fit for your SMB sector.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
I both in working with lots and lots of customers and also internally, having gone through this, there's also this kind of hidden benefit of just not having to relitigate things all the time. When you haven't done this foundational work, you find yourself litigating case by case by case because nobody from the top has put a flag in the ground and said, this is what's most important. So there's all these other benefits of like this decision-making rubric that's created through this work, where all of the people downstream can just move faster, move easier, move better, because they don't have to relitigate the strategy every, twice a day. They can just move forward.
Exactly. And which is what we saw in the survey results, right? Okay, great. So with that, Mike.
Yeah, I think so. That's step one. We've identified the universe who we want to sell to. And then what our data tells us is at any given time, there's about 15% of that market that we see showing enough actionable research that we'd recommend, like, hey, there could be something going on at this particular account. So about, to put it into Manoj's dollars, it'd be about 135 million of that 900 million, we think is either in market or is showing enough interest that it's worth your time right now to go reach out to that particular company. Now, that could flex up or down depending on your product. If you have a more niche product, it's lower than 15%. If you have a really mass market product that almost anyone can consume, it might be higher. But generally, on balance, we see about 15%.
That's agreed.
Next slide. This is a case study, but it also just kind of continues this conversation of, acting on that 15%. What we've found is that kind of outbound sales or SDR, BDR use case is usually a really simple way to get started with intent data. And it aligns with kind of this presentation and the SalesIntel platform. But this idea that if we just first start by taking the SDR, BDR resources that we already have, they're already sending emails, they're already making phone calls, that work's already happening. Plugging intent data systematically into that process typically is going to be the simplest way to measure the impact quickly of intent data. What you should see is what the quote at the bottom of the slide says, which is, we found meetings or dollars or pipeline that we would not have had otherwise. That's kind of that initial we struck oil moment of, okay, we found revenue we wouldn't have had. Once you've done that, and how you do it is vast, right? You could do it through your CRM. You could do it through a sales intelligence platform. You can do it in a lot of different ways. But once you've done that, then it becomes this exercise of expanding those use cases to support this process, to support this data-driven approach. And how do we take the same data strategy from ICP to intent data and plug it into digital advertising, or plug it into social advertising, or even things like site personalization, Google search, et cetera. So it's about kind of proving that this approach works and then amplifying it with more use cases as you go.
That makes sense. The limited dollars that you have within your ICP, focus on the companies that are already showing positive signs and positive intent.
Right. And, luckily, when we started Bombora, we had to teach everybody what intent data was, which is fun, but a whole different exercise. Now it's intent data is well kind of, hardened in place as a part of a modern B2B go-to-market. Still say only about 30 to 50% of the market's really using it in a meaningful way, but everyone's kind of aware of it. They know what it is. And now it's a little bit like, oh, there's all these different types of intent data. And how do I know which one to use and how to get started? So this is just designed to give a really high-level overview of the Bombora approach versus what is more commonly natively available in like the broader ABM and some of the other sales intelligence platforms, which is sourced from the bid stream. So from a high level, Bombora has gone out and handcrafted one-to-one relationships with media companies, event companies, lead generation firms, even brands themselves, and effectively created a proxy for the B2B research web. The bid stream data comes from websites that auction off their advertising. So these typically are much broader websites, and the data kind of that flows out of that auction process is what flows into these bid stream based intent data products. Mostly for folks on this call, you probably don't care. You want data that works. You want data that's getting you into deals. So we go through the time of curating the B2B research web so that it has that effect, so that it's real and it's accurate and it gets you into deals. Whereas the bidstream stuff struggles to do that because it's just coming from broader websites that auction off their ads. So this is a technical topic, and if folks have more questions, happy to dive deeper.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks. And I always tell people about intent data. Like, it's better to get no intent than to get the bad intent, right? So think of you selling your sellers and your marketers in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
you're doing
and
a disservice to them.
you pay for it. So it's extreme. Bad intent data is extremely expensive because you pay for it. And then on top of that cost, you're sending resources in the wrong direction at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a we have buyer's guide. If you're interested, just drop a note, and our marketing teams will share more with you on this. All right, so moving right along. Now that you've defined your ICP, applying the firmographic, demographic, and technographic data there, you've put the intent layer on top of it, so you know exactly who's in the market or showing interest of your solution. What's next? Right? So far, you have identified the companies. Companies don't buy. It's the people in those companies that buy, right? So that's the third step. Find your people. In buying committees, as we all know, depending on which research you look at, it's 7.2 or 8.5, 9.2 users, buyers are involved in any B2B buying decision. And in most of the platforms, you see if your buying circle, if your buying committee is comprised of, let's just say 6 people, you're going to see, maybe you have 1 buyer you have access to and two influencers. The other folks are just not there. Well, you can't take the ABM, ABX strategy and make that effective, because your marketing has done all the hard work to find the accounts that are the right fit for you, who are in the market, and now they have given you a lead. Salespeople can only be effective if they have the right decision makers and the right influencers to get in front of them and have the right conversations. Filling the gaps, right? In most of the platforms, you just have gaps, as we saw in the previous picture, that out of 6, you only have 2 or 3 decision makers and the influencers available. So how do you go about filling in the gaps? How do you go about ensuring that the people that you're talking to are the right people? How do you go about ensuring that you have the right contact information for those people? For our clients, obviously they have access to our high quality human verified data day one, and then they have access to our research team. We call them research on demand, that they can go and request to fill in the gaps and also verify the context that we don't have in our platform. Because let's be honest, with hundreds of millions of folks in the professional world, there's no one platform that's going to have all the data, right? But when you invest in any other platform, you're out of luck when you don't have a verified contact or verified company or a technology that you don't have enough coverage on. But with SalesIntel platform, you have this research on demand service available to fill in the gaps, at the same time do the verification of the data. And with that, your sellers have access to people that they can reach, right? This is what we call as actionable data. The data that you can use to have meaningful conversation about your product, your services with the companies that are in your ICP and currently showing the intent. Mike?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Manoj. Yeah, so we want to talk a little bit now. Okay, we've ICP defined. We know what percentage of that is in market. We have the contacts now that we want to go after, but what do we say to them? So if you go to the next slide, we can get into that a little bit. It's kind of this hidden benefit of intent data that people don't think a lot about. The hammer to nail use case is prioritization. Who should I care about right now, this week, on this day? Who should I reach out to? But what the data is also telling us is what to say to them. So, you might work at a multi-product company. You might work at a company that has multiple business drivers that lead to a customer buying your product. Example I like to use is, a telephony company, they love selling to businesses that are expanding into new office locations, right? So that it's one thing to know that a company's in market for telephony. It's another to know that it's because they're expanding. So that's the kind of information that's hidden within the data that, when properly surfaced, you can take advantage of. So next slide, there's also, not many of us these days are in this position, but there's also just, if you have the dollars to build your brand and to invest in building your brand, there's also just knowing, that 85% of the market that's not in market right now, they are ready for that brand message. And just being able to segment your list by those that are ready for a branding message versus those that are ready for a more down funnel demand-oriented message is highly efficient. So I wish everyone on the call, these big swashy media branding budgets we were throwing around, that's not the case right now. But as those brand budgets start to come back, not giving a branding message to a company that's showing a tremendous amount of buying behavior is a better way to do that branding. Next slide.
Great point, Mike.
And yeah, this is all to say that this intelligence, it's not just from the intent data. So we have these leads in our system, and applying all of the ICP data as well as the topic-based intent data, that gives us all this richer lead profile that ultimately is going to allow us to automate it down different tracks and to kind of like measure the validity of these different cohorts that this data allows us to create. Right. So if we know companies that have installed a certain technology, they're going to get a different message because maybe your product aligns to that technology in a different way. And so not only can you automate a message that aligns with that technology, but you can also measure that cohort against other cohorts. So applying this data on the lead level and kind of like building process around it's very powerful.
Couldn't agree more with you, Mike. So folks, we shared the importance of figuring out who the ICP is from the TAM, who's in the market within those ICP, and who within those companies that are in the market that you should talk to, the importance of having that research arm available so that you can get the right contact information and the right message. Then the topic is about predictability. Like, how do you plan for your sales capacity? When to make the decisions about realistic decisions about should we hire new AEs or not? What is the right time to get those AEs or not? And this planning, if you've done your ICP planning well, then you're able to answer those questions, right? The CEOs, if you're the CEO, this is a useful exercise. If you're the sales and marketing leader on this webinar or the revenue operations leader, this is a great exercise to go through with your CEO so that their decisions are rooted in the data. The decisions are rooted in those ICP analysis to show how many companies are in our ICP. Of those, at any given point of time, as Mike mentioned, 15-ish, on an average, 15% of the companies are in the market looking for a solution like yours. And from there, the third bucket in the planning process is all about your sales process and your deal dynamics, right? What's your ACV? How long does it take to close the deal, right? What is your conversion ratio from the lead to close? What's your conversion ratio from lead to the qualified numbers? So once you have those numbers, we in our company at SalesIntel, we apply the 70-30 rule. What is the 70-30 rule? Let's just unpack that a little bit. Our 70-30 rule is it's key to the healthy outbound motion. We believe that 70% of the time of our outbound sales results into 30% of the new logo, right? And 30% of the time, 70% of the logos are brought in through inbound, right? But at the end, when we get it to the revenue, it's almost an even split. This is 50-50. The reason behind that is the outbound motion is very intentional and the ACV tend to be higher, right? Whereas inbound the ACV is lower, they may close a little faster than your average time that from initial contact to close sales cycle. Like that's how we define our sales cycle. But we apply the 70-30 rule, and based off of that, we make the planning, right? If all our reps are living off of those 30% effort and inbound is filling in, and they're hitting their quotas, that means it's time for us to go hire new additional reps on our AE team. And if you're not, then you need to stay put, right? So not only this exercise that we went through of ICP analysis, laying over the intent data is important for you to increase your win rate, but it also helps in the planning process and in the forecasting process. The last is the demand center. This is the cross-functional. We saw from the survey that companies meet less than a quarter, like sometimes once a quarter or less than a quarter. We believe that building this demand center, which is a cross-functional, that takes you from ICP target and territory planning to pipeline generation to progression, right? So generation of pipeline and progression of the pipeline, and then measurement of what worked, what didn't work, and bringing the full loop back in your planning is going to help not only your sales and marketing leaders, but across the board, your executive leaders, sales, marketing, revenue operations, and the product teams are going to stay aligned. Okay. With that, we'll open up for Q&A. I think we have 9 minutes.
Great.
We absolutely do. And in record time, gentlemen, that was a lot of content to get through. And I'm glad we did, because we have several questions that I think are really going to be beneficial to everyone. So some of them I've been answering as they come through, but please don't hold back, everyone. If you've got questions, let's go through this. All right, so we're going to start up to the top. And Manoj, this would be a great question for you. For telephone outreach, mobile phone numbers are key to reaching and conversing through cold calls. What is the aim for SalesIntel to capture that data per contact?
What is the?
Yeah, I think what this person is getting at specifically is what is SalesIntel's mobile coverage? I'm going to go with that. I think that's what they're asking.
So we have the highest coverage of mobile phone numbers in the industry. Depending upon the segment of the market that you're going after, we may have 40% of your decision makers' information available on the mobile phone, all the way till 90%, right? So there's a range. It all depends upon who you're going after.
No, absolutely.
Great.
All right.
I just don't want to run out of time, and there's a couple good ones at the bottom around intent data. Like,
yeah, I was going there next.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure we get to a couple of those.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna give you the really good one here. Many people on the Wizard of Ops public Slack group community are saying intent data cannot be trusted. How would you respond to this?
Yeah, so I think it reminds me of this idea of like arguing without disagreeing. And so I would say, like, how are we defining trust, right? So our kind of submission would be that if you just call/email, identical process, 100 companies that we showing increased research and 100 companies that we don't, that there would be lift in that exercise like 98% of the time. So it's not perfect. Sometimes there's offerings and holes in data that can be dodged. But a lot of times what people are reacting to is, I called this account, which they said had intent, and they're not in market. And so it's an exercise of scale, and it's an exercise of being powerful directional data. So it's a matter of like, I'd challenge us to like make sure that we're looking at the exercise the same way, which is hard to do in this medium, but happy to have anyone reach out and we can talk more about it.
No, absolutely. That's a great one. And this is also one that I would love for both of you to weigh in on, because it really speaks to how to actually use this intent data. How should a company approach intent data from an opt-in perspective? Intent is only at the account level. So it's hard to know the exact person who was doing the search that the intent picked up. Are you aware of any methods or programs to reach out in mass email methods and entice marketing opt-ins?
Yeah, I think I'll love to hear Manoj's take too, because this then like swims over into the contact world. But on the intent data level, there is geo data. So to the degree that you can, depending on how you're operationalizing the data, and especially if you're selling to enterprise where you've got multiple locations, explore how you can surface that geo data. So it'd be like, okay, company X is seems to be showing increased research in, let's say, a widget as a product. If providers can also tag, that seems to be emanating from Southern California, or that seems to be emanating from the Chicago metro area, then it makes that kind of contact hunt a little bit easier. But Manoj, would love to hear kind of.
Great point, Mike. Great point. So I think there are two lenses you apply on the intent data. One, what with the location. So Dell could have 16 offices. Which location is this intent coming from? And then your buying center, right? Who makes the decision? Who's the influencer? So when you put that, we segment all the context based on the title, and then further level and department. If you know that your product is purchased by directors or VP level folks in finance, then all of a sudden you're narrowed down. So in Chicago office, right, of this company X, intent is coming from, and we sell it to finance director and VP. So your subset of people that you want to talk to becomes very manageable.
Now, I'll also jump in as a director of marketing on that real quick. It's a directional signal that will send people in. It's very difficult to get to the individual, but it is good for all of those elements. And that's how we drink our own champagne. Like we do that all the day, and we talk about how we use it. All right. Okay. So we've got a lot of more questions in here as well. Let's see. In the 70-30 rule, you said 70% of the time. So I think we're just getting some clarity on that. Manoj, would you mind going back to that slide for us?
Yeah, let's go back to that slide. So it's about 70% of your, So 30% of your new logos are going to come from 70% effort from your sellers, it's your BDRs, your AEs, right? Opportunities that are driven from outbound channels, whether it's outbound emails, outbound phone calls, social touches, and in 30% of the times, your logos, your 30% of the efforts that you're spending, the logos that are coming in, new logos are coming in from 70% of your logos are coming in from 30% of the efforts, right? Is that clear, or should we unpack further? So let's just say you won 100 accounts in a quarter. 30 of them are going to be as a result of your outbound team. 70 of them are going to be a result of your inbound teams. But if you look at the amount of efforts by your sellers, by your sales organization, 70% of the times they are the ones who are making the calls. Right? They're the ones who are making the outreach.
Yep. All right. Well, if that didn't clarify it enough, please let us know. Come back in through the chat. All right. Here's another great one about really identifying and sizing your market. When creating the SAM and SOM, are you using existing base of customers or using market data for new logos?
Both, right? If you have a running business, right, you can take the characteristics, the same, your demographic, firmographic, and technographic data of your current base and see where do you have the highest retention rates. Right? When we looked at our data last year, we looked at the customers where we had the 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, right, of retention, and we applied those firmographic and technographic data off of that. Right? So if you have data available from your current customers long enough of a history, then that's where you start. Otherwise you start with, as Mike mentioned, put the stake in the ground and then continue to refine it.
Absolutely. All right, and then we have another, or actually I'm going to jump up to here real quick because I think we had some questions about this, Manoj, and then Mike, I'll have one for you next. What data partnerships does the Research on Demand team leverage in order to aggregate the necessary data points to define ICP and identify if an account fits? So maybe let's clarify Research on Demand and how the SalesIntel tools work there, Manoj.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at SalesIntel, we have our own data and a technology and the sources of data that we get the data from, right? Let's take an example of, let's see what's a good example, of contact data, right? We have over 14 million users that use our mobile applications to scan business cards at different conferences or manage their address books, right? The contact data comes from there. As we all know, the data is noisy, gets old. We have then our data pipeline that is based on AI as well as NLP engines to curate it. And based on a signal of the data, AI buckets that, we call that as a machine verified data. AI buckets that contact data at certain level of accuracy, but we can't give the data to sellers to go make the calls, because imagine if the data is 80% accurate and you're making 10 calls and 2 out of every calls are going to the wrong person, right? We believe that work should be done by someone like us. So we put the research team on top of this machine verified data, so that the data that we give to your sales and marketing team is 95% or higher in accuracy level, right? So hopefully that answered the question. We collect the data from different sources, apply the technology on top of it, fully knowing that it's never going to be 95% ready. And that's why we put the last layer of human verification on top of each layer of data that we own and operate.
Absolutely. So the research team helps fill in the gaps, and then by using SalesIntel, you're able to determine your own ICP.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Mike, here's that one for you. Coming from Adele, is there a way that SalesIntel Bombora can show the date that the intent data was updated?
Yeah, good question. So our approach, and Manoj, you can speak to how it manifests in the product, but our approach is to update the data on a weekly basis. So our idea is we're tracking a company and their interest in a particular solution. We want to look at that over a long period of time and kind of take these weekly snapshots and surface a weekly score. And this is a conscious decision. What would be bad is if every time we saw a little activity, or God forbid, one activity, we would surface that signal to our customers and they would be kind of chasing every little thing that happens on the internet. The internet's a big place. So what we try to do is curate it and say, okay, these weekly snapshots are the right cadence to make a declaration as to a company's relationship with a solution. So unless there's something different SalesIntel is doing, the data is updated weekly.
Yeah. So we refresh as we get our data from Bombora every Sunday night, I believe. Data gets refreshed. So Monday morning, you're getting fresh intent data within our platform.
No, I love that point, Mike, of it's not just every little update that comes through. I think that's even in our own best practices that we recommend having at least a few intent topics that really show that signal. Because if someone's searching for just one thing, that's how you get like the Green Bay Packers searching the oil and pipeline spill that happened like months ago. If you're looking for just one thing, it can be confusing.
It's kind of a cross to bear for us, and we probably do a better job, but these best practices are key in the downstream success. And we have thousands and thousands of indirect customers. So, but you're exactly correct. Like the curation of the signal is important. So if you're selling widgets, there's probably lots and lots of different things that go into researching and buying widgets. So curating the right signal and then acting on that signal at the right kind of threshold of kind of aggressiveness of that signal is important. And if anybody is struggling with that or needs some help or thoughts, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, I think you even have a guide for that. I'll do a little plug for you on that one. I know there's an intent selection guide for how you go through and actually determine what are the best topics for you. So that's definitely great information if you all aren't familiar with that yet. Last question that we'll get through today, because we're starting to slow down, was just a general comment about please say more about forecast predictability. So Mike, Manoj, would love to hear you both speak on how having great data and really leveraging account technographics, firmographics, and intent data can help you better forecast your success in 2023.
Mike, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, we look at, I think what Manoj was getting at earlier is this idea of like, if you systematically go through that process of ICP, and then you consider that 15% is in market, you can do math in terms of how many reps you're going to need to go hit that number. And you'll have these great indicators along the way of when it's time to add more reps. Another way folks are overlaying intent data, and this is a sophisticated use case, is creating a health score against their pipeline. So if you've got a pipeline of, to keep it simple, 100 accounts, you can look at the intent data across those 100 and associate that with the intent data that happens before close one and start to get a good idea of kind of how healthy that pipeline is. So yeah, if that helps.
I'm happy to share our model, like where we take all this data in a Google Sheet. So please drop me a note and we'll be happy to do that.
All right, and then we also have one person asking for your contact info. I'm going to send that along to them,
Sure.
so that way everyone can get it. And then Manoj, would you mind going to our last slide for the day?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we also do have a special offer that's running through SalesIntel, but of course powered by Bombora for the intent data. A free offer to see 5 companies showing intent in your ICP today. You can reach out via this link. We'll have people reaching out to you to make sure you can take advantage of this free offer and actually see who's showing intent and see if you can't move people in that right direction. So thank you again, Mike and Manoj, for joining today. We had a lot of great questions. Thank you, audience, for being so engaged. You'll get a copy of this recording in your inbox soon, and we hope to see you back. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Great. Thanks, Ariana. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.